Hi, Rasil.
Thanks, Subodh.
So,
Hi, Shobha.
I'm privileged and delighted to be part of this conversation. I loved your book. I think we had talked about giving a short summary of the book for those who might not have read it, and I'd like to start by saying that Rasil addresses what, like Subodh said, she addresses a issue head on, but she does it with a very light touch. It's a very readable book. It doesn't sound preachy at all. The characters are fun and they are eccentric and quirky, like our author herself. But Rasil, please give us a summary of the book.
Thank you, Shobha, for your kind words, and Subodh as well, and to Bangalore Lit Fest and Nata Galata. I'm really excited to be here today. Unfair is actually a story about two young girls and who are best friends, and I think we can all relate to that. We all have a best friend, someone that we just that we grow with and that we delight in life with. And so we have two girls, Meher and Lina. And there's a situation basically that presents itself in which Lina, who is our a sensitive young girl who walks on air almost, like she's just a dreamer, and she's really excited to try out for a play because she's decided that she's going to be an artist, an actress, an actor in her life. And when she tries for a role, she's told that she doesn't qualify because she's not fair skinned, and so that throws her into a very different headspace. And her best friend Meher is right there with her, who sort of lives vicariously through Lina, and just can't understand why her friend has become so withdrawn all of a sudden. And the two of them together then, I wouldn't say conspire, but they learn to stand up for themselves and to stand up for what they believe in. And they don't take anyone head on, but they just present themselves and they grow.
So in both these characters, Meher and Lina, you have presented issues that all women face. For example, in Meher, you talk about her curly hair, and as somebody who is curly haired, I know I can relate exactly to that. So there's this whole idea of female beauty and what society tells us how we are. Did you go through that? I mean, as you wrote the book, I mean, all the childhood memories, did any of that come up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first of all, in India, we gravitate towards fair-skinned people, and we assume that fair equates with beautiful, which is a very unfair way of looking at the world and looking at ourselves. And I see people all the time. It was in my generation, it was in the generation before mine, and it continues to today, where we see people everywhere wanting to lighten their skin or to appear lighter. And it's great. You can actually do that on Zoom. You can use filters to make yourself appear differently than you actually are. Before, it was the makeup artist who did it for our movies, but now we can do it for ourselves. But that is something that's rather mild. I think what comes to play is all the kids 20 years ago and today who are using products to lighten their skin. And those products have things like steroids in them, which have long-term ramifications on their skin, and not just on their skin, but on their sense of self, their self-esteem. And it's really a terrible thing to do to them from early on. When we hit 12 and 13, I mean, it's the age of the onset of insecurity is what I like to call it. We don't really know who we are yet. We don't have our place in the world. We're not children. We're not adults. We're not even teenagers yet. And that's the stage where you start wondering, you start questioning who you are, how you are perceived by the world around you, but you don't have the mental makeup to work through it. And yet you're not at a space in your life where you might talk to people because no one can solve your problems. Only you can solve your own problems. So I think that's kind of the situation these girls find themselves in. And again, as a curly haired person, I've always had Meher's horns come from mine. I've always had hair that would never sit properly, and it would go straight up like this. I'd have too tight braids, and then I'd have these horns that would stick out like this, and they bothered me so much. And then I saw, like, everywhere you look, you have women with beautiful, long, straight, silky hair. Every shampoo commercial is about that. So the standards of beauty have been set by a minority, but yet the majority of us accept that.
So I want to ask you three questions. The first about plot, and then about character, and then how you address the cause. So the book is tightly plotted. How did you do that? I mean, is it free? You make it up as you went along? How did you plot it?
No, actually, I started with the character. So I had the story in my mind, which is that, how mean is it to feel suddenly that you are not acceptable, your beauty is not acceptable just because it's a different color. So that's where I started with that premise. And then I thought, who are my characters going to be? And so I actually created a character sketch of everyone I thought would be in the book. Clearly, there were two protagonists. I like the idea of having two friends. Each one has their own growth. Each one has their own challenges and works through them through the story. So who are they? For example, Meher, she has horns. She has frizzy hair. She has...
By horns, Rasil means the curly hair that goes up, just in case.
Like that.
Yeah.
She's awkward. She's a nerd. I love nerds. They're so interesting. It's just that we don't listen to them enough to kind of, just appreciate them for who they are and their quirks. And then I think, with Lena, she's a dreamer, like I said. She has that beautiful straight hair. She has big eyes that are doe-like, and she's a classic beauty. But we don't necessarily see her that way because someone else decides for her, who she is. But when I was doing the character study, sorry to get back to your question, it was everything from the size of Meher's shoe to, what Lena, what her weak subjects are, what her insecurities are. I went into the parents, like, who are they? What do they do for a living? What does their day look like? If they weren't in the fields that they had chosen, what else could they have been doing? What is the second career choice they could have had? What the dadi is like, what the teachers are like. And I think, so from there, once I had the characters in mind, then I did a fully detailed outline, chapter by chapter, scene by scene, so that when I was writing, some things would happen organically, but I knew which direction I was heading in.
And some of your secondary characters too, like the nurse, like Dadi, they're all so interesting because I think they're fully formed in your head, and that shows. Did you struggle with any aspect of the writing process, Rasil? Was any character giving you trouble, or Oh yeah, before that I wanted to ask you about the cause, because one of the nice things is you taught me certainly about what the purpose of skin tone, and so how was that? How did you decide to do that?
So I think, the kids today have access to a whole lot of information. So it was trying to strike a balance between explaining what our skin color is and why we have it, versus lecturing them or giving them a science lesson. So, but I also think that you give them enough information that it makes them think for themselves. And then if they want to learn more, they will. But it was important to bring that in, because I think just to say that you should accept who you are, but you should know why you are the way you are. And then it's so much easier to accept it because we are built this way. We inherit these traits. We have them because of evolution. It's I think that was an important aspect to bring in, but hopefully likely.
So for the reader's benefit, Rasil does this thing where there is a discussion between a mother and a daughter about skin color and the purpose of, as she said, about evolution and what happens. And it's actually a lecture that the mother, who is a doctor, gives to the daughter. But the dialogues are really fast and funny in the book, so it doesn't feel like a lecture or a teaching moment. And after reading that section, I thought to myself, was this necessary? And I decided that it was, because A, it teaches you a lot, teaches me as an adult a lot, and B, as it gives context, like Rasil said. So the second part of my question was the difficulties with the writing process, if any, or was, once you have done all the work you did, was it a breeze?
Actually, I started writing this book in past tense in the third person. And then about 6 chapters in, I decided I didn't enjoy it. So I switched to first person, and I decided both of them should have their own voice. So trying to keep them distinct, and as well, and to make it in present tense, because I wanted it to move. I wanted things to happen. For the reader, I wanted them to happen live. So I didn't want the characters, 12-year-olds to be reflecting on what had happened. I wanted them to be reacting to a situation. And that's why I wanted the reader to engage with those characters and their stories. So that was difficult because you can't do as much detail when you're doing present tense. You have to really let go of a lot of things. So let go of a lot of things that you like you want to bring in some kind of detail about what someone is wearing or someone's doing or someone's thinking, but you can't, because in first person, you can't think what the other person is thinking.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And you told me earlier that the hardest part for you was ending the book. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I mean, how did you decide, and tell us about the inner workings of your mind?
Yeah, ending the book is really, really hard. I think, how do you not have a pat ending, but yet you want to make it complete, but it should still leave the reader knowing that things will keep moving on. So for me, ending the book with text messages between the two characters. And that also showcased their personalities because they write very differently. I think we all know that we speak a certain way, but when we're texting, some of us use acronyms, some of us use slang, some of us write full sentences and paragraphs. So having that engagement between the two and just making them just sort of finishing their day, like this is something that has happened and now it's over and now we continue. So that kind of helped with the ending.
And you have these wonderful moments where, like I said, you do it with a light touch. So Leena's father is a dentist. Yeah. And she goes auditions for the play, and then the teacher in a roundabout way says, you cannot be Juliet because you're dark. And then she comes home and her world is shattered. And then a little later on, her father comes home, and because he's a dentist, he says, show me your pearly whites or something. So then she says, oh my God, white, dark, everything all around us is about fairness and darkness. So it's these little moments. So was that engineered? Did you come up with 5 moments like that and choose one, or did it fall in place organically while writing it?
It sort of fell in place organically, actually. The idea that when something is in your mind, you're obsessing over it.
Yeah.
And so, you see things that are just so innocent, like so innocently said, but then you read into it much more than there actually is, because that is her state of mind.
Yeah.
So for her, and just having the dad joke around about pearly whites, and then him saying that, oh, she's bristling, because that's what happens with the toothbrush as well. So just bringing that in and just, keeping the moment, showing it from 2 different perspectives, actually, where the parent or an outside person is just saying whatever comes to mind with no malintent. But for the person who's deep in a place where they're wrapped around a particular idea or thought or emotion, how that they interpret it so differently.
I loved the character of the mother of Leena. Leena, like I said, is the protagonist who is dark. And there are so many scenes in which the mother almost can sense. So this girl goes and puts peroxide on her face in an attempt to become fair. There's this whole thing. And then the father, the dentist, walks in and says, I'm smelling peroxide. What are you doing? And she says, she starts lying. And the mother you don't know if the mother can sense the daughter's pain or not. So that's a really nice way she's handled it, because the mother comes and stands by the bed. She sees the daughter. She wants to say something. It's almost like a Hindi movie. I think this should become a movie. And then she walks away very quietly. So Rasil, you used Shakespeare a lot. What was that choice?
I didn't realize how much I loved Shakespeare until I realized that it's in both my books. Shakespeare is so layered, and Shakespeare is also really well known. I think most kids by grade 7, class 7, will start reading or be exposed to Shakespeare in some form. And the most obvious choice is, of course, Romeo and Juliet, because they're teenagers, they're young, and so they relate to those characters so well. The parents are standing there, they're the villains, and so forth. So I think, and Shakespeare, because the language is so layered, for when Shakespeare says fair, he doesn't necessarily mean fair skin. He doesn't really necessarily mean just. He can also mean kind. So there's a lot of wordplay there. And I thought, how can I use Shakespeare to sort of foreshadow what's coming in this chapter? Maybe he intended something else, but this particular language, this particular phrasing works for what I'm trying to do in this book, what's happening to my character in this book in this moment. And so that's how I used him.
Yeah, I thought at first you went and did a search on all the words fair and dark in Shakespeare and chose the quotes. And then I discovered they're a lot more nuanced than that. And you use it actually for tonality, like you said, of the foreshadow. Okay, talk a little bit about the cause that Subodh said in the introduction and all of us. So the book is about this obsession with being fair in our culture and as Rasil says, in most cultures. So what riles you up about this, Rasil, and why did you decide to write a book about it?
Well, I think there's so much damage being done to young girls and even boys now. You know, Shobha, I think if you very recently, up until recently, maybe it was about a year ago, John Abraham was in a commercial where he's, you know, using a product and he washes his face and he becomes really fair all of a sudden. And the idea is that he was dirty before he became fair, you know, and he became clean, and clean is associated with fairness. And I think that's not the way to look at it. I mean, we are all different colors. We are, you know, we're a strong culture, and we have, and what we give to each other, to the world, has nothing to do with the color of our skin. And we should not create fairness privilege. And I think that's what we're heading towards. And if you, even today, when you look at the newspapers and you look at the matrimonials, those are placeholders of prejudice. Every single thing starts with, you know, fair, 5'4". I mean, almost every matrimonial for a female will have her skin color written in it. So I think we need to move away from that. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I don't think we should pass this on. This is not something that our kids should have to inherit.
Arun G asks, to what an extent the media frenzy of contests, the advertising of grooming products, etc., and the information explosion about this issue, to what extent are they affecting the kids? So I guess in a way what he's asking is, who's the culprit here?
I think we're all the culprit here. We all suffer from insecurities. So if, you know, if the Roman nose is the desired shape for a nose, then we all want to have the thin nose, and the industry is all, you know, the industry is basically offering us options to slim it down or to elongate. So I think it's really comes, we have to look within ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't think we should necessarily be pointing the blame. We should look within ourselves, and then we should gather, we should collaborate, and we should make sure that we pass on the message very clearly that we accept ourselves for how we are.
Two other questions. One is, from me, what are the challenges about writing realistic fiction for children? And then the next one would be, was there an inspiration for you to write about colorism in the context of children? So you can take either one first.
You know, realistic fiction, I love realistic fiction. I love to read realistic fiction. I think the stories are all around you. You don't have to look very far. And the challenge in writing realistic fiction is to actually keep it real. You know, and not to be didactic when you're writing it. And it's not an opportunity to like teach and preach. So for me, this is a story. It may not be your story, it may not be my story, but it's definitely someone else's story. And by reading it, perhaps it opens my eyes to the world differently, and perhaps I'm a little bit more empathetic to people around me. Maybe it makes me more perceptive. So I think that's the power of realistic fiction, because it takes place today. The other challenge is, of course, keeping the language fresh, and also keeping it real. You know, how do people talk? How do they engage with each other? I think it's a really hard thing to do. Actually, I learned the word salty, Shobha, from your daughter. It was in a conversation where she was not happy about something, and she said, "I'm salty, Rasil auntie." And I thought, oh, salty, what a great word. I mean, you could taste it. My mouth was puckering. And this is how this particular generation, that's the language they use. So just learning all of that. What does lit mean? What does salty mean? That was really, to me, that was really fun.
So do you read out your work like some authors say they do, because dialogue is your strong suit, and the dialogue is just fast paced. It's very real. So how do you get it right?
I think reading it out loud is very important because the pacing, you can tell when something is slow and when something it needs to be sped up, and something is too fast and needs to be slowed down a bit. If there are extraneous words, your tongue actually trips over itself as you read. So reading it out loud constantly was really helpful.
You don't dwell on, as you said, you said you don't dwell on too much description, and you've chosen consciously to keep the dialogue propel the book. Was that a conscious choice, or was that just, this is the audience I'm addressing, and so this is how I'm going to address them?
This is actually the choice that was made for me, because I decided to use first-person narrative. And because of that, I could not add too much description because the person is thinking, and because it's in present tense, it's all happening. The action is happening. So it needs to kind of, you can't segue into this long drawn out, like, this is what's happening in the world. This is how I'm thinking about it, because it doesn't work in that POV.
I asked you earlier what inspired you to write about colorism in the context of children. This could be an adult book. I mean, it could have become an adult book, but was there a specific trigger that caused you to choose this as a subject?
Yes, actually. I went to the beach where, of course, you're going to get a lot of sun and you're going to darken. And I noticed suddenly that people around me were using SPF 100 on their children. And, our skin is too dark for SPF 100. We don't need it. We're not going to burn that quickly. It's really intended for very light-skinned people. So that overkill of, putting on as much as possible, not so the child won't burn, but likely because they're hoping the child won't brown. So that was one. I read in a couple of posts online, people were asking how to lighten their baby skin, people who were mixed children. Someone was much lighter skin married to a much darker skinned person, and they were different races and they were also Indians, but the fact that the child might be darker skinned was problematic. And then the third thing I noticed is that suddenly, instead of wearing a swimsuit to the beach, people were wearing scuba gear. I mean, they were head to toe, in swim gear, all the way to their wrists and to their ankles. And the only purpose of that is to make sure that your skin doesn't darken.
And
I imagine.
Yeah. No. And I think that it's all around us. Some of us take it for granted and some of us write a book about it. You have clearly chosen, you've used COVID to write a wonderful book, Rasil. And the last, I think we have time for one last question. Do you think there will be another book on this kind of a topic? Will your next book be a cause-based book, if I can use that word, and I hate it, but I will, for lack of a better phrase.
So I didn't intend to write an issue-based book. That was not the intention of Unfair. It's just a story. And it's a story that matters, that needed to be told. But it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't intended to be didactic. The next book that I'm working on, that I'm nearly finished with, is also about just being different, being a little bit different, and what that means to be different from others. But again, I don't think it's meant to be didactic. I don't think it's meant to change the world. There's no cause that any of these books are carrying heavily on their shoulders. They're just stories that need to be told. And I think the more we tell these stories and the more we see ourselves in them in some form or the other, I think it makes the world a better place. I think the more we read, we make the world a better place.
So I'll end with two of my favorite characters in your book are Dadi and Garv, for very different reasons. Both are for the benefits of the readers. Garv is the annoying big brother, and Dadi is grandmother. Both of them have streaks of meanness in them, and both of them somehow find it in themselves to be kind and stand up for this dark-skinned heroine who is sort of broken up by her skin color in the end. Do you have any favorite characters or situations from your book that you'd like to end with?
Oh, my favorite scene actually in the book is when both Leena and Meher act out Romeo and Juliet, but in their own words. So when they stand on stage, actually, if I could, I'll just open up the book. It's page 159. Give me 1 second. When she says, oh Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? We all know this line. I mean, I think it's imprinted in our DNA at this point. And Meher becomes Romeo, and she says, I'm at your beck and call, fair maiden. And Leena says, you think me fair, dear Romeo? And she says, yes, your beauty is like a torch that burns bright. The whole of Verona knows and speaks well of your fairness. And Leena turns to the audience and she removes her mask because she's wearing a mask. If you remember, there's a masquerade ball in Romeo and Juliet. So she removes her mask, and then the crowd goes, says, you love me only for my beauty. Your dark eyes speak kindness, your fair words have a gentle touch. And if I were not fair, Romeo, or different from what you believe, will you refuse me? And that's when she removes her mask. And Romeo then responds, you have tricked me. You are not fair at all. And what of your promise of undying love? I love only beauty, and beauty is only fair. You deny me love because of the color I bear? I deny you, yes, for your looks I do not care. Oh, Romeo, your words are unkind and unfair.
Thank you, Rasil. This book should be made into a movie and a drama. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shubha.
On that wonderful